Like, I didn't change anything. I didn't have to go anywhere or work hard. It was in my brain, and it was a shift in perspective. And then my whole perception changed. That's what's beautiful about any psychology or positive psychology or mindset work is it doesn't have to be hard, but you do have to be willing to be open to see things a different way.
This is the Born to be Brilliant podcast, helping you harness the habits and unlock the tools to bring you more meaning, vibrance, and the personal power to help you shine like the diamond you are. So I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Niyc Pidgeon. Niyc is one of the mentors I've had in my life. She also taught me everything I know about positive psychology. She is the queen of positive psychology. She is a business mentor. She's an all-round amazing human, and she's here today to share with us the power of positive psychology, the science of happiness. And we're going to talk a little bit about her new book as well, which is just incredible. Niyc, massive welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know, me too. I can't wait to get into this conversation. It's crazy because I'm sat here and I'm here with somebody who I know is a really happy person, and so am I, and we're both upbeat kind of people. And it's actually quite a serious topic when you delve into the depths of positive psychology, and there's two sides to it, and I'm really excited to talk to you about this. What I'd love to share, first of all, is just what led you into the world of positive psychology in the first place.
I mean, the original number one sentence and single conversation that I had that totally made me change my career trajectory was when my partner, who was a professional cricket player, came back from a psychology session that he had where he'd been told, like, when you're on the cricket pitch and you're on the field, don't look for the fielders, look for the gaps in between them instead. Now, at the time, I'd never studied psychology. I had no interest in it. I didn't like sport. I was supposed to be a mechanical and automotive engineer. And that single conversation changed my entire life, because I thought, when we're looking at the opportunities or the things that we have going on in our world, how much time do we spend on the things that aren't working instead of focusing on the things that are? So that gave me a big kind of shift in perspective. And I went to study sport with psychology, and then saw a notice board in university for an after school lecture one random Tuesday that was about this thing called positive psychology. And when you just feel like you've found the thing, I stayed after the class and I went to this lecture and I was like, oh, this is it. And I just think my body knew, and I intuitively knew that this was the thing that I was going to do. So I ended up doing my thesis in my undergrad about gratitude, and then went on to do my master's in positive psychology from there back in 2009.
Wow. So that's really fascinating. I didn't realize it came from that sports analogy, but what a great analogy anyway. The answers are often in the space between.
Totally. And it's like, when you just shift your perspective, I think that was what was so mind blowing for me. It was like, well, I didn't change anything. I didn't have to go anywhere or work hard. It was in my brain, and it was a shift in perspective. And then my whole perception changed. Yeah. And I think that's what's beautiful about any psychology or positive psychology or mindset work is it doesn't have to be hard, but you do have to be willing to be open to see things a different way.
Which actually, leads me on to ask, what, for people who might be listening that might not know what positive psychology is and might think that it's thinking positively and being optimistic, how do you define it scientifically, of what it even is as a science?
So it's the evidence-based understanding of what it is that makes people and communities, organizations and business actually thrive. So instead of focusing on disorder and disease, we look instead at human strength and virtue. And we look at how we can actually build on the things that are going right, and how we can have this shift in the way that we think or we feel in order to experience greater levels of well-being, higher levels of functioning, performance. But we're also seeing now that positive psychology interventions work for clinical populations and they support mental health.
I really, yeah, I think when we, like you say, shift that thinking, it's not so like people do think sometimes, oh, if you think positively, positive thoughts, and it seems like a bit fluffy. But like you say, when you actually dig into the science behind that and how it's that focus on what's going well, it's the focus on the good rather than fixing the bad or focusing on the bad, which would you say, so that's how it's different to therapy. Is that right? So therapy is more of a healing.
Yeah, so I mean, therapy can be 100 different versions
True.
of therapy. So you could have a very specific modality that you work with in a therapy session with a therapist, like something like EMDR, or you could go and do trauma work, or you could have an integrated session where you're working with both of those things and positive psychology as well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just have to be one thing. And in that, like, I am not a purist. So I don't believe that positive psychology is the only way, but I know that it is one way. And it's
Yeah.
also a way that I've experienced massive positive change in my life. And I also know it's something that's very practical and very simple to start to implement. And it also complements all of the different modalities.
I was going to say it does. It definitely complements. One of my clients was going through CBT and we did positive psychology sessions while she was doing that. And you could see that the two had their place for her. And, you know, she was getting benefits from both. And that was amazing actually to see that transformation. So I hear you 100%. So what was I going to say to you? Yeah. Are we genetically predisposed to have a certain level of happiness so I'm thinking in families, siblings, maybe, you know, brought up in the same environment, nature, nurture, like what differentiates people who tend to be able to find the good as opposed to somebody who will allow, or for whatever reason, things really do take them down?
Yeah, so I mean, it can be a combination of factors. So I think that mental health is a complex topic. So I just want to acknowledge that it's never just going to be one set way that works for everyone. But what positive psychology does is it tests exercises and interventions and it shows what works well, that's statistically significant and works for most people. Now, there's a theory within PosPsych called the happiness pie, which sounds quite cute, doesn't it? And this teaches us, it's Sonia Lyubomirsky is the researcher, and she teaches that there is a genetic set point for our well-being and our level of happiness, and it's different for everyone. So one of my friends, for example, back in Newcastle, she said to me last time I saw her, she was like, I just don't understand mental health. I don't understand why some people feel bad. Like, I don't feel bad. Whereas for me, I've had many, many times in my life that I have struggled. I have felt like I've had low mood. I've been demotivated. I also have ADHD. And I've been in a place where 4 or 5 times in my life, I've also had suicidal ideation. So I've been there. I've been to the depths and in the darkness within myself. And that's actually how I know that these tools work. So we can't necessarily feel what other people are feeling, but we can make a difference to the way that we feel.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that happiness pie is they say that it's about 50% is genetic. They say 10% is circumstantial. Yeah. So, you know, like some people get irate when there's like traffic or the weather's bad or whatever it is. The kids are driving me crazy. Yes, and that's only 10% of your happiness. 40% of it is within our control. So when I first heard that and when I remind myself of that, I realized like that's like a massive opportunity for us to be able to create positive change in ourselves and in our lives. So it doesn't matter if you're naturally predisposed to feel lower than someone else. There's still something that you can do, but you do actually have to start.
40% is a lot, but then you and I see it as a lot. But there'll be people that go, 50% is out of my control, even 60 if you count the circumstantial. Like 50% is predisposed. What if somebody is like, I'm quite a low person. I kind of tend to see the negative, cup half empty, and that's 50%. can't do anything about it. Like, how do you flip the switch on that? Because I know we are the kinds of people that go, that's 40%, that's massive, that's loads. But there will be people that go, it's not enough.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, even that 50% that's genetically set, there's something called epigenetics, which means that through our behaviors and choices, we can actually start to influence DNA. And the potential for that for generations to come means that our kids can have a different genetic set point to the one that we had growing up. So that feels exciting.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, like, when you think about, like, even if you've got X amount that feels like it's out of your control, like, would you rather feel a little bit better today or not? Would you rather be able to activate the compound effect of taking small daily actions in the right direction that over time compound to big results? Or would you rather stay a victim to what's called negativity bias? So that actually is the fact that we experience hard things more powerfully inside of our brain. So bad times, hard stuff, it affects us more, it lasts longer, it's easier for us to recall a bad memory rather than a good. So they did some research in positive psychology, which looked at something called the positivity ratio. And that looks at what it actually takes for us to shift that. It's almost like a seesaw.
Yeah.
So if everybody's brain is naturally more negative, I think even knowing that it's not just me or it's not just you that feels like this, it's natural to remember hard times more powerfully. But also now we know that you need 3 positives to outweigh a negative. You look at your life's experience and you think, you know what? I feel like it's been really hard for a really long time. And then you look at how much negative stimuli or input do you have versus the positive. And as well as boosting your positive, you can start to get rid of some of the negative to kind of readdress that seesaw and get the balance into a place where your well-being can actually improve. But I think the lesson within this is you do have the power. You are in control and there's things that you can do.
And what about, like, you mentioned there the word victim, and I come across people who, you know, we probably all play that part at some point, you know, and it comes up for everyone now and again. But if you, that 40% that's in your control, how do you take ownership of that if you have found yourself to be perhaps blaming people, circumstances, you know, all these things happened to me, looking at other people to fix you, or, oh, well, they need to change, or they need to, you know, mend their ways in order for me to feel okay? Like, how, if somebody is very set in that place, how can you help them, I guess, out of that? Or what would you say to somebody in that situation to empower them to take that control over their own happiness?
I mean, the word empowering, like, that is something that the essence of it. So when we make somebody, when we blame, okay, or when we make somebody the person that's responsible for our happiness, we're actually disempowering ourselves and we're handing our power over because we're saying that they are responsible for the way that we think, feel, and experience life. And that is actually just not true. So it might feel like you're going to be able to get more of a resolution in the conflict that you're experiencing by hoping that somebody else is going to do it for you. But there's a great level of peace and that empowered feeling that you talk about that comes from taking responsibility for our part in things. Now, what that might look like is, first of all, like, literally just asking yourself that question. So what is it that I can take responsibility for? Like, what was my part in this? Then I also love to ask, like, what can I control in this? Because when you ask that question, you realize I can't control the other person. I might try and I might expend all of this energy trying to force them to see it my way or do it my way. But ultimately, the only thing we have control over is ourselves.
100%.
That person might then learn from you being a role model. They may or may not. But ultimately, it's up to you. And you have to be okay with okay, I'm seeing this situation play out. This is what I'm responsible for. I can control myself and my actions. I need to look after myself through this process. I want to resource myself so that I can feel better through this. And I want to look at maybe based on those things that I've taken responsibility for, I can control, and also being mindful of what the actual goal is or the vision. What are the steps or the actions that I could take to move towards that?
Yeah.
So you bring your power back, you actually have more agency
Mm.
and you feel better because now you're not in that loop of failed expectations. It's the failed expectations that cause the suffering. It's like, I wanted so and so to be or do or say this, and they didn't. So now I feel bad and it's their fault.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, you're putting the power outside. You can call it back and you can
Yeah.
feel better.
That's so true. And I say that to my kids, even, I've got a preteen daughter, usual challenges that come up and things. And I always say, you cannot, I've said this to both of them, you cannot control other people. You can't control what other people do or say, how they behave. You can only control how you respond. You can only control how you behave. So yeah, lead by example and choose how you, and even to each other when they bicker, like, but he said this, but she said that. And how are you going to respond to that?
And I think, honestly, Lucy, that's the perfect example of integrated positive psychology because you've studied it and you've embodied it. And now it's like second nature and you're like teaching your kids, and now they're growing up in a positive psychology household without them even realizing it.
True.
So good.
So true. So how does, and this may or may not be a question you can answer fully, I don't know, but how do certain neurodiversities impact our ability there? So you and I both ADHD, autism, we've got OCD and all of them, but various conditions, I suppose, or I always call it like I always think it's not a defect, it's just a wiring. It's a certain wiring, right? And is it right to say that certain wirings of the brain find it more challenging to take that on board and take the ownership of their emotional well-being?
It's going to be varying experiences and degrees for each of us, whether we're neurodivergent or not neurodivergent. So I think that the first step is actually releasing any shame around who we are and the way that we do things and where we're at right now, and treating this as like a clean slate and it's ground zero. And we're just going to start from here and we're going to decide to do our best.
Yeah.
I think I look back over so many years and so many experiences of navigating hard things where I'm like, whoa, like I feel like I did a really bad job of that. And I can say with full integrity, I did my best every single day. Yeah. So I think that's like what I hold as true within myself.
Yeah.
And I look at so I'll speak from my personal experience of having ADHD. I was diagnosed many years ago as an adult when I was experiencing mold poisoning. And I didn't know at the time that it was mold. So I went for a brain scan and they shared with me, they were like, you have anxiety disorder, you have depression, you have ADHD, you have PTSD. It's like this long list of things that was very shocking to hear. And I think of ADHD specifically, and we can take a positive psychology-based approach to this. Yes, it is neurodivergence. Yes, it is a condition. And what is good about that? Like, what are the strengths? Like, I know I wouldn't be as good of an entrepreneur if I didn't have ADHD, because I'm able to see like the patterns and connect things together. I'm like, oh my goodness, we could do it this way. Or what about this strategy? So I really learned that when you treat something as an asset, it will be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm not a total disaster in so many areas where, like, honestly, I don't have kids. Trying to get out of the house, right? And like, remember everything that I need to take. I'm like, how am I going to survive when I actually have kids? Because it takes me 4 goes to get out of the door.
I was going to say, do you go back several times?
Yes.
Because I do. I rarely get in one trip to the car without, yeah.
But I'm kind of like, all we can do is do our best. And that comes with like the practices that we put into place for ourselves. It comes with really learning what it is that you need.
Yeah.
And it comes with as well, I think, like learning how to communicate about it.
Yeah.
Because I've had people who've said to me without realizing that I have ADHD, like, oh my God, and this person had ADHD, and almost making them a bad person because they had it. And we had a conversation around it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in my world of psychology and therapy and coaching and mentoring, it's not thought of negatively. It's thought of as something that, like, when you focus on the strengths, what can it actually give you?
Yeah.
So I've seen with probably since the pandemic, like that feels like it was actually a really positive experience for mental health, because whilst so many of us suffered being lonely and being inside and navigating our internal world from the inside walls of our homes, what it brought forward was new conversations and a new willingness to speak up about the way that we feel. And I think that is such a gift, because now people are actually going to see their doctor, or they're going to speak with a therapist, and they're letting go of the shame that was previously associated with that. And I think in my like vision for a future world, it's a world where this is normalized, and it's normalized in schools, and positive psychology is taught in schools. And we recognize we're all unique and different.
Yeah.
And we just have to figure out what it is that works for us.
I love that. That's so empowering. Do you think that's sparked a thought? Do you think that there's a lot of talk about the pandemic having a negative impact on mental well-being? Is there, or has there been a spike in mental well-being problems since then, or is it just that it is more talked about? Like you say, it was always there, but people just didn't talk about it as much? Or
I think like you can look at what the real data says, and there's definitely more willingness to go and seek support. There's also more support that's available. And you never know how accurate the reporting is. So you look at, for example, like areas that don't have as much money, or you look at like diverse populations, the incidence of suicide, for example, in young Black girls versus young white girls versus young Hispanic Latino girls, it's 30% more prevalent in Hispanic and Latino populations. And it's actually double for young Black girls compared with young white girls. And one of the reasons for that, so they saw a huge spike happening, and generally it can be things like social media. But when you're looking in communities, they might not be as resourced to actually have access to the support.
right.
And what the studies say is that I think it's something like 4% of psychologists are Black. So then you've got a young girl who doesn't feel comfortable speaking to a psychologist that doesn't look like her. And the ricochet or the ripple effect of that, where now young girls don't feel comfortable to share the way that they feel. Or let's say somebody has grown up in a home that doesn't have positive psychology, or let's say someone's grown up in an abusive household, or a household like, for me, we didn't talk about our feelings. It was like, you just get on with it.
Yeah.
So whatever the experience is, I think that we have to look at it from all different angles. How can we get more comfortable having the conversation? But how can we also start to like address some of the imbalances with getting resource into communities that really need the help, whether it's high schools or whether it is communities that are under-resourced? I think we've got massive work to do.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just the start. I think it's like an opening to I say mental health adventure, because I think there's so much stigma that's like, oh, mental health or like disorder, or there's something wrong with you. I'm like, how about we go on a mental health adventure together and we
Yeah.
see what's possible then?
Crack it open and see what we can do.
Find the treasure.
Yeah. I'm really open about having ADHD, and actually I see it as a superpower. And if anybody, I'd be almost a bit like, oh wait, does somebody actually see that as negative? Because I see it as really, helpful in so many ways, and especially when you're aware of the hindrances. But I also see so many women in leadership, entrepreneurial roles, discovering that they have ADHD, and there's got to be a reason behind that, like you say, and the positives of that. There is something really empowering, I think, about finding, as you say, the super strengths in the way you are wired, however that may be. There's no right, there's no wrong, there's no such thing as perfect, and it's finding what works.
Yeah. And also, like, I really have enjoyed, like, I know it's not funny because sometimes it is frustrating trying to get through the day, and it feels like no matter how much you try, like, things keep going wrong. But there's some accounts on social media where I've looked at it and I've just laughed, because they're people with ADHD and they're talking about the common problems that happen with ADHD. And I feel so seen. Like, that is literally me. I will tell 10 stories to get to the one story that I was supposed to tell in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. It's definitely reassuring when you know it's not just you.
Yeah, exactly.
But also when you see people like yourself doing such amazing things and so successful with it, there's certainly not been a hindrance to you. So, it's really reassuring. So, positive psychology coaching, how does that help people? I mean, obviously I know you taught me how to do it, but for our listeners, how does that help people? If somebody's thinking, well, I'm interested in this whole positive psychology thing, this sounds like it could be helpful for me. You don't have to have something wrong with you. You don't have to be down in the dumps to go, let's have some of that. So yeah, who is it for, and how can it help people?
Well, I'll go against everything that I teach in marketing, and I'll say it's for everyone.
Yeah.
So in marketing, we say, like, you've got to choose a niche, and it can't be for everyone because you'll end up speaking to no one. But I really do see that positive psychology, it's like an umbrella that goes over everything. So it can impact your health. It can impact your money, your relationships, like literally everything across the board. And I noticed a problem when I came out of university, because I had all of these tools and read these journal articles and papers, and literally sat in labs and like done the statistics on the computers, and invested like 5 or more years of my life into doing that. And I came out of university and I'm like, but now what can I do with this? And I didn't understand how to connect the research and the science to actually helping people in their day-to-day lives. So it was through my practice. So I've been a psychologist for over 13 years. I've run online businesses for over 13 years. And I've been a coach and mentor for over 13 years. So it took for me to have these 3 areas of experience in life to finally bring them together in this really strong triangle to see how we can integrate the tools so that they work for people in their day. And the way to do that is, first of all, to use them for yourself so that you understand how they feel, so that when you go in to coach them for a client or you're talking about them, you actually know what the benefit is. And I think sometimes people skip that step and they go to, right, I've learned this thing over here, now I want to go and coach and teach it. But the big lesson with any personal growth is like, you've got to do it on and for yourself first. Yeah. And once you've had that transformation, then you can go and support people to create the breakthroughs and results for their lives too.
Yeah, it is so for everyone. And I think whether you're of the older generation and experiencing a new stage of life, whether you're a parent, whether you're in business, whether you don't have to be having challenges you could just be like, okay, so actually things are going really well. What can I unlock that can, help me go even further? And obviously I've been through your training and as all the parts, because that's part of the training. So I've been on the recipient end of it and coached it. And it is like mind-blowing how you see that shift in your well-being, especially when we measure that and the things that it unlocks. And I also feel like it's such an endless journey. It's not like, yep, you come in and you do that and then you're fixed and off you go. Like it's an ongoing practice, and it's an integrating those practices into daily life so that, like you said, you can start to pull in these tools that, like, before you know it, you're quoting stuff to your kids and you don't even realize it because it's just how you live. But your first book, Now Is Your Chance, excellent example of that. And I think it's such a great book for anybody. I listened to it on audio before I got the physical copy, and I love how you take people through such implementable things. And now with your new book, One More Day, I mean, wow, just wow, that's taken us into a whole nother level. Was that second book in you from way back? Has that been brewing for a while, or was it like a next revelation?
I think I always knew that I wanted to be a writer and a speaker. I never thought that I would become a positive psychologist that is so passionate about suicide prevention. So that was born from my 3 friends that took their own lives. And it didn't really make sense in my mind, why I would go and write about this thing until it made so much sense that it was like, I can't not do this. And it's actually the thing that the world needs the most. So Now Is Your Chance is like a tool book and a practical guide to living your happiest life. And I think about that as you can just pick it up, you can flip it open, and you can take a tool and you can do something in 5 minutes in your day. One More Day has really got this energy of its own. It's super powerful in terms of, I feel like it's a book about hope. I feel like it's a book that offers us the reminder and also the tools to show that life is worth living, and to show that even on those hard days, you can get back up and you can keep on going and not just survive, because some days it might feel like you're just getting through the day. I'm getting through one more day. But there's so many examples of where people have bounced back and they've gone on to become stronger than ever before. So they've stepped into a place of post-traumatic growth. And I think the intention with the book is really to start. So it's not a solution, it's a start to us preparing ourselves so that we are stronger, more resourced emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, so that we're able to find more comfort in relationships. We're able to put ourselves into a position where we're devoted to our own personal practice, where we're devoted to positive mental health, and that we're connecting with each other so much more, because we know that the number one protective factor is connection and social support.
Everyone should read it. It's not, like you say, it's not a book to fix somebody that's perhaps in a dark place. It's everyone should read it and tool up so that
it's giving me chills. I love that.
Well, then, and actually then pass that on and teach that to the next generation, and it becomes again more talked about. It's amazing that you're putting this into the world.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you opening up the conversation and being willing to have it, because every time I have a conversation with someone, there's either someone that's been touched by mental health challenges or even by suicide. There's also people that have never experienced it before that say, Nick, thank you so much, because I'm a mum or I'm a dad and I am terrified about the world out there. And I want to be able to learn these things for myself so that I can have more conversations with my kids. And I just think it's the book is for someone who wants to use it for themselves, but it's also for the gatekeepers that get to have conversations and raise awareness that might be able to help someone, whether they know it or not.
It's so great to equip people with that knowledge, the understanding, the compassion, all the tools. It's amazing work. And thank you for putting that out there, because like you said, you lost 3 friends, 3. And I know you've said before, there was a time when you were curious, why did they feel that way and I didn't? And, you've had your own journey and you've gone, well, they did and I didn't. What's different? And learning and understanding how people work. And it's become, I think they would be so grateful that you've put this out there as well. I think it's amazing. I really do. Welling up.
I know, me too. Well, I hope we can help some people and save some lives. Like, it, honestly, Lucy, it doesn't feel like my book. It feels like it's a book for the world, and just seeing the response and the energy that it has. It's like, I wrote the book, but it feels like it was something that was just way bigger than me, that the world really needed at this time. So I'm really hoping that it gets out there and it starts to create a shift with the intention that I hold for it.
It will. And well, we're obviously going to put the link in the show notes as well, so people can get their hands on it. Absolutely. And everywhere. And I think you just know. And you said, like, way back when, I mean, I bet you don't regret not going down the engineering route now. I'm sure.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine? What would life look like?
No.
Would you still be in Newcastle?
Well, I love cars still. So I got to go to the Formula One last year, but in a totally different context. I finished writing the book. I sent it off. I went to see my friends. I was there with 12 guys, like all like marketers, and they said, Nick, what's your book about? And I told them, I'm not even joking, some of the most beautiful conversations with men that said, I was struggling and this is how I got through it. So I just think this is like hitting differently now, because there's a time where I would have gone to the Formula One and everyone would have thought I was a weirdo for talking about mental health. Now I'm so grateful that people are receptive to it.
That's incredible. You just knew that day when you said, I just knew, I saw this poster and something that just, and you do. And I think I can relate to that, because there are things that I do that I do and I love and they're great. But there are other things where I go, I just know that I need to do that. It's what you would do if you never had to work another day in your life or do another, it's the fire, isn't it? And I think you can see that, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
A bit like when I first discovered you, messaged you and said, can I work with you? It was like, I just knew.
I just know, like, I just feel it.
Yeah.
I'm so good. Trust that.
Totally. Nick, I am so grateful for you coming on the podcast and having this open conversation. I don't think it will be the last. I think there's like
I'll be back.
there's more to unlock, and I think this is just the beginning. But I'm really excited to help push your book out there into the world. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us today.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and remember, go out there and shine your light bright, because you were born to be brilliant.